Hi, I'm Jody Nishioka, and I'm the Executive Director of Communities Rise, which provides capacity building services and legal support to community organizations who are working in communities of color.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Perez, and I am a community organizer with the Washington Dream Coalition. Our work is to address inequities and obstacles faced by undocumented immigrants in Washington state. We create change through community based organizing, education, and advocacy, and we're fiscally sponsored by Scholar Fund.
And hello, I'm Madhu Singh. I'm the managing attorney at Foundry Law Group, where I work with community organizations, entrepreneurs, startups, and businesses, helping them with their legal needs to achieve their missions. The three of us are excited to be with you here today and have come together to talk about fiscal sponsorship relationships between a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit and another community organization.
This video is part of our Fiscal Sponsorship Toolkit, which was created by Communities Rise in partnership with Communities of Opportunity. The toolkit is designed to support organizations that want to explore fiscal sponsorships. We will review what it means to have a fiscal sponsorship model, explore the advantages and disadvantages, examine examples, and discuss key legal considerations. The full toolkit can be found on the Communities of Opportunity and Communities Rise websites and will allow you to dive more deeply into the topic and explore additional resources. While this toolkit guides you through navigating the legal landscape of nonprofit leadership structure, none of these materials should be construed as legal advice or any other form of professional advice or counsel. Each organization and fiscal sponsorship relationship is unique and complex. For legal or professional advice that is specific to your organization, please consult the relevant professional for your needs. In addition to this video, the Fiscal Sponsorship Toolkit has 5 components. First, an introduction of how to use a toolkit. Second, recommendations on laying the groundwork for creating a fiscal sponsorship agreement. Third, a fiscal sponsorship checklist, which helps to describe all of the provisions in a fiscal sponsorship agreement. Fourth, the fiscal sponsorship agreement template. And fifth, a statement of shared values template. Let's first talk about what is a fiscal sponsorship relationship, and then highlight some of our key takeaways that can help spark important conversations between you and your community partners or collaborators. Madhu, can you give us a short version of what is a fiscal sponsorship relationship?
Thank you, Jody. Well, I'd like to think of the relationship as piggybacking off of an existing tax-exempt organization. The most common scenario is the community organizers who are doing good work in the community and are trying to get funding for their work. But most funders prefer to give funding to a nonprofit with a tax-exempt status. The community members then either need to incorporate as a nonprofit and apply for their own status, which can take a while, or they can find an existing 501c3 nonprofit with a shared mission to be their fiscal sponsor and accept funding for them. So in a sense, they can piggyback off of the fiscal sponsor and focus on their work. Because the community group does not have a legal entity of their own, the fiscal sponsor becomes a responsible agent for managing the collection and disbursement of funds, executing grant agreements, and meeting all the other legal requirements that go along with supporting organizations and managing funds. There's more to it, but this is just a short version. Check out the toolkit for more details.
Alejandra, as a community organizer who is doing work that is fiscally sponsored, can you share what is the most important things in a fiscal sponsorship relationship?
Yes, my 3 biggest takeaways are 1, develop a mutual understanding of who is doing what and how. Before entering into a fiscal sponsorship relationship, both the sponsor and the sponsored group must discuss their expectations and who is going to do what, and the various processes of getting the work done together. 2, maintain clear communication. Both parties should agree on the best way to communicate with one another. That could be through email, Slack, text, phone, and others, and be responsive when they need something from one another. In addition, it is important to be consistent in the communication about the creative ways of navigating the complexity of the nonprofit sector and understanding of its moving parts. Don't focus on why other fiscal sponsors haven't done something, focus on how it can get done. And 3, partner with those who have similar values and aligned culture. Sharing values and commitment to each other's mission and respectful communication are examples of how we are in community together. Each group should understand what is important to the other and to have ground rules on how to be respectful and in a productive relationship. Madhu, what are the key considerations from your perspective as a lawyer when considering a fiscal sponsorship relationship?
Thank you, Alejandra. A lot of what you said is part of the legal considerations as well. First, I want to assure you that the law does allow for fiscal sponsorships at the onset. However, there are a few things that you should consider as you think about entering into this type of relationship. First off, the IRS has rules. When it comes to a fiscal sponsorship, the IRS requires that all activities of any 501c3 organization fall within its stated organizational mission and meet all of the IRS 501c3 rules. This means that the fiscal sponsor is responsible for making sure that the sponsored group or project is in compliance with all IRS rules. If the sponsored group doesn't comply, the fiscal sponsor could possibly lose their tax-exempt status. Number 2, mission alignment does matter. The fiscal sponsor group mission has to be aligned or fall within the fiscal sponsor's mission. As I mentioned, the IRS wants to make sure that the fiscal sponsor is complying with its rules. One of the most important rules is that all the organization activities fall within its stated mission, because that is the basis on which the IRS has granted them their status in the first place. Lastly, but perhaps most importantly, having a written agreement. When 2 or more organizations work together and money and expectations are involved, it is always a good idea to discuss how the money is going to be handled and what those expectations are. With the craziness of nonprofit life, it's easy not to remember all those details, so it's best to write it down and have everyone agree at the beginning when everyone is feeling great about the mission and the work ahead, not when things maybe not are working out. Then you know that you have documentation to refer to in the future. It's also important to know that all these agreements are enforceable, and then it helps maintain the relationship between the two entities. It allows you to agree on mission, scope, projects, and what's ahead in the future of their relationship.
Thanks, Madhu. With those considerations in mind, Alejandra, based on your work in the community, what do you think is motivating organizations to explore fiscal sponsorships these days?
Yeah, I agree with Madhu's initial description of a sponsorship scenario, and I would add that it often goes deeper than funding. Running a nonprofit involves so much more than the mission and the program work and getting funding for that work. I'm seeing young leaders who have a passion and energy for community work, but may not have the capacity to deal with the administrative, record keeping, legal, and financial management tasks that are required if they raise any funding for their work, especially if their organizing is volunteer-led and grassroots. Many young leaders are also interested in not perpetuating the nonprofit industrial complex. They want to be sure that their work is focused on solving issues in their communities. So they're looking for a sponsor to support them as they navigate the complexity of the nonprofit sector. On the other hand, some new leaders may want a deeper support that could include coaching and training in areas like fundraising, grant writing, and strategic planning. It is important to make sure that both sides clearly understand those expectations, which can vary from relationship to relationship.
Thanks, Ale. I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper. In your experience as a leader of a fiscally sponsored organization, what qualities should folks look for in a fiscal sponsorship?
I think that when you want to look at the leadership in the organization, you want to see how they run the organization and if it is aligned with your values. For example, if you have a value of centering racial equity in your work, you want to make sure that the sponsor has that value as well. If you value community-based decision-making, you want to make sure that the sponsor will support and encourage that process. It is always about relationships. So you want to make sure that the people you're going to be working with at this organization are people that you can get along with and that you are both interested in building a trusted relationship with one another.
I completely agree with Alejandra. The most successful fiscal sponsorship relationships take place when there's a clear agreement on the importance of the work and how the money is going to be distributed, as well as strong communication and trust between the two organizations.
Thanks, Alejandra and Madhu. I have another question. Madhu, are there disadvantages or hot issues that we should be careful about?
The biggest concern is oversight by the fiscal sponsor to make sure that the money is being spent on activities that are consistent with the requirements of both their mission and the IRS. The fiscal sponsor by law has this responsibility. If not all activities of the fiscally sponsored organization are in compliance with the law and the mission expectations, they can run into penalties, or even worse, lose their status. Sometimes that oversight can feel overbearing, like someone's trying to tell you what to do. So the processes to accomplish the oversight should be thoughtful and not unnecessarily restrictive or overly time-consuming.
Thanks, Madhu. Without going into too much detail, because that's what the written materials are for, can you talk about key components of a fiscal sponsorship agreement?
Sure. The toolkit includes a template fiscal sponsorship agreement and companion materials and checklists that explain what the provisions of the agreement mean. It's important that both the parties spend some time reviewing it and agreeing to the terms and signing off. At the end of the day, there's basically three main parts of this agreement. First is the introduction, which gives context about the nature of the work of both the organization and why they've chosen to enter this agreement. Second, there are legal provisions that you might think of as boilerplate, but are important to any contract, like the term or length of the contract, that this agreement is the whole agreement and there are no side legal agreements, liability exposures, etc. And third, the responsibilities of the fiscal sponsor and the sponsored organization, and describe what the financial obligations are. It is important to discuss, understand, and agree on these provisions so no one is surprised later and you can prevent future misunderstandings. Remember, this template is a tool for you, and each fiscal sponsorship relationship is different, and you should take the time to customize the agreement for your situation. You can edit provisions or take out things that you feel are not necessary, and describe the roles and responsibilities in a way that makes sense to you. Negotiate this fiscal sponsorship fee that works for both parties. That being said, it's always a good idea to engage an attorney to review and to make sure that the intent of the parties is covered. You can reach out to Community Rise for some help for that. There are disclaimers on the documents, as they are provided as part of this training and they're not a substitute for legal advice. However, you can ensure that there are good starting points as you have these discussions with your sponsoring organization.
Thanks, Madhu. I also want to add that the fiscal sponsorship agreement is a legal document and doesn't get into the relational soft skills and expectations that go into a trust-based relationship. To address that, we created another template document that is meant to serve as a shared statement of values between the parties. This is not a legally enforceable document, but it provides a format for the parties to capture how they want to be in relationship with each other and the values they want to work under. It could also address how you plan to deal with conflict. Again, these templates are meant to be tools and adjusted to your specific needs. We hope this video has helped you to better understand the why, the what, and the how of fiscal sponsorship relationships for nonprofit organizations, as well as how these relationships work in our current legal system. We encourage you to explore the written materials that provide more details and link to additional resources. On behalf of Communities of Opportunity and Communities Rise, Alejandra and Madhu, thank you for watching, and we hope these tools help you as you explore fiscal sponsorship for your organization.